These are our panelists tonight. You can give a wave, everyone. Say hello. Excellent. So we've got some people coming in from DC, New York, Greenville, South Carolina, Warner, New Hampshire, Cambridge. Excellent. Anyone else wants to add State College, Pennsylvania? Yeah, we'll getting the hang of the chat feature. Excellent. All right. It looks like we are almost near our full attendance number. So I'm going to pass the virtual mic over to my colleague, Kelly Groom, our Director of Education Programs.
Thank you, Naya. Welcome to the Fine Arts Work Center's virtual series. I'm Kelly Groom. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, we are honored to present the new Provincetown Print Project Symposium. The project celebrates the important role of printmaking in the history of the Provincetown art community. And tonight we are going to begin with Gail Mazur in conversation with Bert Yarborough on the creation of Michael Mazur's creation of the project. The conversation continues with participating master printers and artists, including Richard Baker, Tony Kirk, Andrew Mockler, Kiki Smith, James Stroud, and Rob Swainston. Bert Yarborough will be moderating the conversation. So Bert, I'm turning it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly, very much. Welcome everyone to this panel discussion. It's really great to have all of you out there supporting and being curious about what's been going on at the Fine Arts Work Center with this print project. I'm delighted to be in conversation with all my colleagues and these incredible artists and printmakers, as well as Gail Mazur, to celebrate the formation back in the 90s of the Provincetown Print Project and the continuation of it with the Provincetown Print Project portfolio that we created for the 50th anniversary of the Fine Arts Work Center. I had the great privilege of working with Mike Mazur when he first became involved in the Work Center over 30 years ago, and working with Gail. And perhaps Gail could come on and share the screen with me. But one of the things that I wanted to do first before we started is that Gail is not only, and I'm going off the visual script here a little bit, Gail is not only the wife of Mike Mazur, but she's also one of the finest poets that we have in our country. And she has 8 volumes of poetry to her name. The newest one just came out this year called Land's End, which has a beautiful piece of Mike's on the cover, I believe. And I just wanted to read a little note that came out about Gail's book from the Publishers Weekly Review. In this comprehensive volume, Mazur demonstrates a remarkable mastery of poetic technique as she depicts human relationships in all of their ambiguities. These poems highlight both the arc of a career and the seamless unity within Mazur's distinguished body of work. So it's a real privilege to know Gail and to work with her and to know her these many years and to work with Mike. So Gail, thank you for your participation and your long support of the Fine Arts Work Center.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be welcomed by you. You know, you were here before me. Mike's and my first visit to the Work Center was life-changing because we fell in love. So I think Bert wanted me to talk a little bit about the beginning of the Monotype project that Mike began at the Work Center in 1990. He had in the 60s seen an exhibit that actually changed his life, that a graduate student named Eugenia Janis had mounted at the FOG of Durga monotypes. And they're explosive, incredible things. He'd never seen anything like it. And it sort of developed a passion in him for making prints. And I think he, especially because he was a restless, hyper energetic artist, that the idea that you could sort of just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and make all these variants in this spontaneous way, in the form that came to be officially called the painterly print. And that seems to me as good a definition of the monotype as any I've heard. So when we moved down here, the Work Center didn't have a summer program, and we were renting apartments in the summer to make some money. And Mike decided that it would be a great thing to teach his artist friends how to make monotypes. And he would, being fearless, put together portfolios and sell the portfolios to museums, to print and drawing departments for the profit of the Work Center. The setup was the artist would come for 2 weeks. Mike and his master printer, Bob Townsend, and I would be their love slaves for 2 weeks. They were all learning something that, a medium that they hadn't worked in before. And they were under enormous pressure. In 2 weeks, they could make as many prints with this printer as they could make, as they wanted to. And they'd never made monotypes before. And the only restriction was that Mike would choose the 10 from each artist to go into the 10 portfolios. So it really worked wildly well. And by that time, Mike had edged into painting too, so monotype and monotype, etching, painting, all went together. When people came, one of the impulses too was that Provincetown was getting more expensive, and the same impulse in a way that started the Work Center, which was to make artists and writers fall in love with Provincetown so they'd find a way to live here while it was getting more expensive. And by the same token, working with other artists in the summer in this very intensive, as Bert can tell you, way was exciting for artists visiting. And we hoped that they would fall in love and stay the way we did. There was no other summer program. Robert Motherwell had donated one of his small presses to the Work Center, and Mike donated another. I think it was his press that had belonged to his teacher, Gabor Petterby. And he conceived the idea of bringing 4 artists for these residencies every summer. And it went beautifully from the start, and partly because Mike had unlimited energy, and then we were there at the end of their day as they sort of fretted and anguished over whether they could really make good monotypes. It was beautiful work. It was beautiful work. And those 2-week periods were pretty emotionally dramatic for most people, because there was that arc of, I can't do this in 2 weeks. I've never done this before. And then wonderful monotypes being made. And I don't know if this list is coming out, but just to name a few of those first few years: Mary Frank, Yvonne Jaquette, Sylvia Mangold, Sam Messer, George McNeil, Gregory Gillespie, John Walker, Fred Sandbeck. An enormous aesthetic range here.
Right, and we have prints of theirs, which we will be showing as we move through this talk.
Great.
Right.
And then the third year, Mike, because this was the early 90s, Mike invited 4 artists who had done some work with patients of AIDS. One was a doctor artist, Eric Avery from Galveston, to come and do their project on the theme of AIDS. And that was sort of unusual and great, beautiful project. And in fact, this is a sort of local art gossipy story, but one of the one of the artists at the Long Point Gallery, which had been founded by artists headed by Robert Motherwell and Bogosian, had suggested that it would be really good if Mike presented these AIDS folios to the gallery to be shown. And that wasn't something they usually did. And there was a big brouhaha about it, that it didn't have anything to do with their gallery. And Mike was thinking, oh, why did I come here? This is making me feel awful. And then there was a silence, and Motherwell said, it would be a disgrace if we didn't do this show. And that's one of Mike's favorite Motherwell stories, obviously. So within a few years, I think Bob and Mike were ready to have the print shop be used more widely, and that project was exhausting. And then, and this segues into what Bert was really new, was the whole thing of having artists coming and making making monotypes for our annual benefit, and have what Mike and Bert call the monotype marathon. So I'm happy at the end to answer any questions.
I just put up the first image. If we could go back to that, this is a photograph in the print shop at the work center. It's kind of a little homage to Mike. It's his photograph up there with his book and the board brush and rollers. It's right under the, right above the paper watering tray. So everybody has an opportunity to see that Mike is the kind of the print shop god here. And the next image that we have on this PowerPoint, if you could, Naya, is the logo of the new Provincetown Print Project, which a long time ago, Provincetown was named Helltown. And there were houses out there where that lighthouse is, which is Wood End, which is the very, very tip of P-Town. And at a certain point, it became unlivable, and they brought these houses over on boats. And if you go into Provincetown today, there are some houses that have this plaque on it that shows this image. So Mike adopted this logo for the new Provincetown Print Project, and we've continued to use that. But I think, your description of those early times with Mike working with all these artists, and we have one of them with us, Richard Baker, who's here, who will hopefully talk a little bit about working on that project when he worked. I believe the last portfolio that they created were from primarily the local artists that lived and worked in Provincetown.
And 7 of them, so it was a big.
Right. And Mike included himself in that last portfolio, thankfully.
He did?
Yeah, he did. He included himself, and Richard Baker, Paul Bowen. Paul, unfortunately, was unable to connect with us tonight. I know he was on the list for those of you who are watching, but his internet died, so he was unable to connect with us. And when we were thinking about the 50th anniversary, this is a photograph of the portfolio itself. And when we were thinking about it and putting it all together, we wanted to revitalize it, but we did it in a different way, in the sense, instead of having one master printer, we had an individual master printer working with each artist. And so we're lucky to have 4 of those printers with us today on this panel. If we go to the next image, you can see the portfolio opened, and this is the front piece opened, the participating artists. We're lucky to have Kiki Smith with us today. Unfortunately, some of the other artists could not schedule with us, I'm sorry to say, but we're delighted to have Kiki. This print is Nicole Eisenman's print. This is Nicole signing her print, and she worked with Andrew Mockler. And so Andrew, we have Nicole up here now, as well as some images of your studio and so forth. So perhaps you would say talk a little bit about working with Nicole. We can unmute you. We have to unmute you, Andrew. You're on.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So Nicole, I met Nicole when I was teaching up at Bard College and asked her to come and start to make some prints. And that was around, say, 2008, 2009. And we made maybe 16 editions over the period of a year and a half, where she had put away all of her paints in a trunk and locked them up, and she was working with a number of different workshops to create 3 different groups of work. So flash forward, when the time came to start working on the new Provincetown Print Project portfolio for the 50th anniversary, I asked her to participate, and she said she was willing to do it, but she didn't have time to come to the workshop to work on a stone. So almost all of the prints that I make here are stone lithography or plate lithography. I also do woodcut and combinations of material, of different printmaking techniques, but lithography is the primary technique that I use. And stone lithography is something that she really fell in love with. So I brought her, I found out that during the WPA era and the Artist Project, there were stones delivered throughout New York, supposedly on a horse-driven carriage to different artists in their studios, and they would bring a stone to the artist at the beginning of the week, pick it up, the artists would draw the stone in their studio, and then they would pick it up at the end of the week, proof it over the next week. So there was, you can see a lot of the prints that you see from the WPA period are these kind of smallish lithographs, which is handy because carting around a large stone is not actually really that easy to do. But I wanted to kind of backtrack a little bit to give you an idea about some of the things that you're seeing on the screen now. So I met Mike Mazur in 1991. He was working with John Walker during the summer, and then he did a few more years of the project during the summer. I started working with him on some lithographs in New York. He came down and started working on some of his own prints in my shop. And then he suggested that we continue the print project by inviting artists that had been on his mind to be working with, but that I would work with them in New York and make limited edition prints instead of the monotypes that he had been working on in Provincetown. So we did a couple of projects. I worked with Peter Hutchinson, and I'm not leaving, don't worry. Okay, I don't know if you can see this. Okay, Peter Hutchinson's print is called Ozone Eater, and this is from
Can we get
1995. It says, trading coffee is stimulating, pork bellies are sagging, while diapers hit rock bottom. And then it says, it has a kind of a dragon picture on the left-hand side. And he made a copy of one of his notebook. I think it's in reverse. Oh, well, it's not in reverse in the real print. Anyway, and there were a couple more projects that we did. One with Mary Heilman, and then there was a kind of a hiatus, and then we started working with. I started working with artists in the mid 2000 teens. I did a print with Alan Gallagher. I don't know if we have that on the.
We don't have this one, unfortunately.
Okay.
But we have the one with Robert Kushner.
And the Robert Kushner prints that you just saw, the Aloe Day and Aloe Night. What we did was we came up to Provincetown in the spring, so it wasn't during the summer session. There you go. and we worked on, he was kind of fascinated by the white line woodcut that was started by Blanche Lazelle and a number of other artists during the early 20th century in Provincetown, where they would paint in between the lines of a carved block. So you get this kind of signature white line in between each section. So we did 2 different versions of this aloe print. And we, instead of carving the line and inking up each one separately, we actually made kind of a jigsaw puzzle out of the different colors and kind of reassembled them to print from. So there are 2 versions of this. And then there was a kind of another hiatus for a couple of years. And then 2018, we all started brainstorming about getting this 50th anniversary portfolio together. And then that's when I started to work with Nicole again.
And I would just add, when we put all this together, we had lots of different conversations about, you know, how to structure it. Jim Stroud was involved, and several people talking about how we should do it. And this was over a period of like 2 years. We started talking in 2016.
That's right.
And it came together in 2018. And the reason it came together so beautifully was because of Andrew. I had the luxury of being in Italy at the time when all of the final things were coming together, and Andrew was the person who brought all of this into the station, so to speak. And so putting the box together and the design, with working with designers and so forth. So it was a tremendous amount of work on his part, for which all of us are very, very grateful.
Thanks, Bert.
Thank you, Andrew.
It was fun.
So can we move on to the next image then, I think, Naya? And this is Kiki Smith's print. And Kiki worked with Tony Kirk. And this is the final print. And as you can see, multiple processes with hand coloring done by Kiki with pencil. And she hand colored each print. And so Kiki and Tony, and I think we have several images to follow this that we can show that will bring us to the process.
Was there a title for the print?
Did you title it, Kiki?
I don't know.
I don't think you wanted me to title it, Kiki. I'm going to leave that to you.
No, that's weird.
Yeah. So, and
so this print is a photogravure.
Huh?
No title is a title.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah. It's a drawing which is transferred to a copper plate using the photogravure process. And I believe that Kiki with Photoshop plugged in those prisms into her hands, holding the prisms.
Yeah, and then we hand colored them.
Yeah, this is one of the largest prints in the portfolio, I believe, and the plate that we used is much bigger by maybe an inch all around than the paper. So there's not your typical embossed plate mark in this.
This is one before the hand coloring right here.
Yes. In fact, her hand coloring is very subtle and very light. It's not heavy. And this proof is taken in my studio, where you can see her notes telling me the direction I should be going in with certain areas of the print, asking me to remove some things and add some things. And also, at one time, we were playing around with printing using a graphite ink, like a pencil color ink, but that wasn't working so well. We ended up using traditional black ink. This is a close-up of the copper plate. And I photographed it because I sent it to my steel facer, Lothar Osterberg, and you can see the copper coming through the steel, especially on the prism. And I was afraid I would lose those tones because the plate would wear down. So we had it re-steel faced so that the first print I print in edition is as strong and as good as the final print. So there's no wearing out. So that's why I photographed this. Maybe Kiki would like to talk about this project here.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I've made a great deal of the prints that I ever made at colleges, because I sort of learned at colleges later in life, going to colleges and being invited to make prints. And so these were made at Alfred University, and every time I've made prints, yeah.
Kiki, I made these.
Oh, you did? Oh, but I made the images at Alfred.
Yes, the photographs. Yeah, the photographs. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just because I didn't stay there long enough. But I made them at Alfred, and so for me, each time that I've made prints, I try to learn about different techniques. And so, these I was interested in making polymer plate prints because they come out very candy-like, and they're each image was some sort of like a little performance or something like that, where I collaged things that I found there in the environment while I was there. And I was trying to learn to do Photoshop, but I still haven't gotten there yet exactly. But I think like if you're an artist, you always have your hand in front of you, and you can draw your hand, like can be your model, and then you can do something with it. And I brought down from upstairs more hand images that were made, like that's one, and this is all sort of the same time. That's one, like a bird, and that's one, and I made a bunch of other ones, which is usually I make them as rubber stamps, and these I made as laser cut, but it's all sort of doing the same thing. I like just making something and making it 50 billion more times in some other medium or something like that. So when Tony asked me for both prints, I tried to think of what kind of experience I can have that's different. And so this, like how the color's really weird from the polymer prints, just because they always come out weird. And then these, it was to hand color to try to get, I took photographs of the crystal, they're like camera crystals and stuff, not, lenses, and shone light on them so that they refracted rainbows inside. And then we tried to get some aspect of that when we were making it. And that's a dress that I inherited from Betty Woodman. So I'm happy seeing that. But, and I will say, yes, again, I said yesterday to Gail that I met Michael Mazur in probably like about 86 or 87 or 88. Well, yeah, 80s, probably 86 or 87. We showed at Joe Fawbush Editions, and he was really the first real printmaker I ever met. And I was so astonished by the way he made prints, by making these monotypes, that, it was just unfathomable to me how somebody could do that. And I was extremely impressed by him. It was like meeting a grown-up artist who knew how to do something. Anyway. Jennifer Melby.
Yeah, I first met Kiki at the Robert Blackbird's printmaking workshop, but I was teaching an evening class about 36 years ago. Neither of us had one gray hair in our head way back then. And then I didn't meet her again until about 4 or 5 years ago during a residency in Ireland. Not half an hour from where my mother was born in County Kerry. And I was in the studio, and Kiki was there with her friend Valerie Hammond. And I was doing some photopolymer prints, and I showed Kiki the technique. And then when I came back to New York, I wasn't busy, right? And I was hoping, be love to work with Kiki on a project, but I didn't want to go there because she works with my close friend, Felix Harlan, and I didn't want to interfere there. But then about 3 weeks later, I got a wonderful email from Kiki saying, I'd like to work with a project with you. And it was these hands holding these objects. And what we did here is using 4 plates, using the CMYK process. The photograph was in Photoshop reduced to CMYK, and so we have 4 plates printing in cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So registration was important and difficult to make sure the print wasn't out of focus. And we've done a project since then, and it's been a great privilege to work with this lady.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tony and Kiki, thanks. I think the next print in the portfolio this is Red Groom's print. Jennifer Melby printed as she was unable to be with us. And it's a 4-color etching, as you can see. And the image in the subject is Blanche Lizelle, again, connected to Provincetown, a very well-respected Provincetown, New England artist. And Red is in Tennessee, down there now, and was unable to join us because he doesn't use a computer, according to Jennifer. So, but we have his print, and it was a delight to have him as part of this project.
Can I say something about this? Andrew was talking before about the print he did, and he referred to the Provincetown white line woodcut,
right?
Which Blanche Roselle, who's portrayed in these prints here, was the leading exponent of it.
Absolutely.
So did you give this portfolio the additional word of new as the new Provincetown Print Project to differentiate it from what we know as the Provincetown Print? Or is that just...
Yeah, I mean, the title of the portfolio was the new Provincetown Print Project. Right?
Yeah. Because the Provincetown Print has a particular look, the white line, as Andrew was talking about.
Yeah, I guess
the colors.
Yeah, absolutely. It's oftentimes when they speak of Provincetown Print, they speak of white line. So yeah, there can be that confusion for sure.
Well, this is a new one.
Yeah, this is indeed. And Jennifer was great. And so this is Jennifer Packer, who worked with Rob Swainston. And Rob, if you are
Hey, I
with us?
unmuted myself. Should I talk?
Yes, sir, you can talk.
Okay.
Appreciate it. If you talk about working with Jennifer. Jennifer could not be with us either today.
Yeah, so, you know, first of all, I see some names of attendees who have taken a class with me at the Work Center, so that's great. So
excellent.
Nice to see you guys, and hopefully see you again. And I see Kiki, who used to be a professor of mine too, there too. So we have all these like levels going on here. Full disclosure, I just had surgery a couple days ago, and I cracked my shoulder. So if I don't make sense, that's because of that. But Bert tells me I'm always like that anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Can you bring the image back up? Can I talk about this image? I don't have anything scripted, but I'll just explain this really fast. You know,
great.
Jennifer had just come out of the Work Center when she did this project with me at Prince of Darkness in Queens. So I was also a resident some years, not that long ago, at the Work Center. So we had like a common ground already to talk about things. Jennifer also didn't want to have any social media surveillance happening while she was working. So I didn't take any photos of her working in the studio and I didn't even save the states or anything because she expressly asked not to do it. So today it'd be nice to have those. But this was Jennifer had done, you know, it's tricky. Like I'm quote unquote, I'll put master printer in quotes. I've been master printing for 15 years or something. And I've worked with a lot of painters in particular, and I work with a lot of artists who don't have printmaking as their primary medium, who want to make a print and are curious about the drawing stuff, and then we'll move in and out of the medium. I'm a little bit like that in my own practice, so I'm okay with that. But Jennifer had only done some etchings that she had done by herself in the Finance Work Center in the print shop while she was a resident working with some poets there. And she had done a set of monotypes at the Robert Blackburn workshop that she really liked, but was her printmaking experience. And everyone knows her paintings are like very labored, very meticulous, very worked over. So when you're working with an art, like the collaborative relationship between like artist and printer, you have to be very careful, especially in the very beginning of the project, how to set everything up and how to really get the artist to sort of feel really comfortable and that they can make things and that they're in charge, but that you're facilitating things for them. So I looked at all these monotypes that Jennifer had done, and I had decided that she really was interested in like that quick gesture, but I knew she wasn't going to get that out of like, especially like a complicated, this is a 3-plate etching, 3-color plate etching, and we made more plates than this to get to this. But I knew that the way that she worked and just watching her draw and talking to her, that we were never going to get to this point without me adding a little bit of fire to the mix to try to get some speed. I hear Gail describe Michael Mazur as like a, what do you say, hyper energetic printmaker. That guy has energy. I think maybe I have a little bit of that. And this is on painkillers. Anyway, so I set up some monotypes where we were just making monotypes and working with an image that she already had. And when she got really interested in something that she had, I offset them onto copper plates. This is a little geeky, but I used an offset press, a Mylander offset press, to offset the ink onto plates, and then I etched the plates. And then after we etched the plates, we had 5 or 6 versions of the plates. After that, she did a lot of work, like going back in by hand, doing some hard ground, doing some spit bite, doing lots and lots of handwork over top of them. So Jennifer came to Prince of Darkness at least a dozen times to work on this plate for like full days. So we got really good friends in that time. And I can answer more questions about this print as you go. I think it's a great print, as you guys can see, and I think it's going to be an important print because we know Jennifer is a really good artist, and I think I just saw her name on the Rome Prize. And I would say that as the first print that she's ever made, in the portfolio, this is a really solid print. And I think she was very happy to work for the Work Center coming out of her experience as being a fellow there.
Yeah,
so, and I'm very happy also working at the Work Center.
And she has just finished being in the last Whitney Biennial as well.
Yep.
So it's really great for her and wonderful that she came out of the Work Center for that. Thanks a lot, Rob.
Okay, did that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just poking at you.
Clear as a bell.
Okay, now I'm going to get off. So everyone ask me questions later if you want, or if you want to chat me directly.
Absolutely.
That's one good thing about Zoom.
If Naya could put up the next print, we'll see where we're at. Oh, this is this is your studio, Rob.
This is Prince of Darkness, Long Island City.
Yeah.
So.
And this is boy, you've got a great ink station there and a wonderful supply of ink.
Color.
Yeah.
This is me being a trader with a Mary Walsh Sharp shirt. Yeah. Okay, keep going.
That was.
I'm going to put myself on mute. Thanks, everybody. Nice to see everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. This is Jack Pearson, which is digital, high-performance digital photo, and Jack's print is of his favorite room in one of the inns in Provincetown, which is called the White Horse Inn. And he stayed there a lot over the years. And the White Horse was owned by a man named Frank Schaefer, who passed away, but his widow still runs it. And every room is filled with what I could only describe as Provincetonia. Paintings, images, sculptures. Every room is kind of handcrafted. And Jack really loved this room, and this is the photograph that he has as a part of the portfolio. All of the prints are roughly on 26 by 20 paper. And of course, some of them are smaller. The next print that was just up is by John Walker, and Jim Stroud printed with John. So Jim, if you are with us, step up.
I'm here.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
we can hear you.
There we go. Hey, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, put your video on.
I'm on a hot spot out in the studio, so
Oh, there you are.
everybody's cool. Great. So I've been working. You got me? Yeah, I've been working with John since he's made many monotype projects and etching projects with me over the years, and he's a little reticent to do this project because he had so much on his plate, but I convinced him to do it. And he had just gotten back from a month residency in China and made some really beautiful drawings of Yellow Mountain. And he showed them to me, and I thought, man, it would be really great if we could translate some of these into prints. And so we started a small version just to test the waters. And then we sort of stopped on that because he was moving it back up to Maine and he got distracted. And then I suggested that we use, if we came down, it came back down and we finished the plate for this test plate, that this could be contributed to the Fine Arts Work Center project, and he was delighted to do that. So we continued on, and I don't know if any of you, the other folks, the other master printers who worked with John, but he has sort of a purposeful disrespect for the chemistry of etching. And he shows up with plates with stuff on it that I have no clue what it is. I mean, I give him all the regular materials, but he shows up, what am I supposed to do with this? And he says, just throw it in the drink and let's see what happens. And you throw it in the drink and you let it sit for a while and pull it out, and for something interesting happens. And then he eventually wrestles it into submission and makes it work. Some other images of the shop, and I thought I didn't have a photograph of John working on this print in my archive, but my son out in Oregon actually did, and I'll see if I can get it up there for y'all. There we go. Can y'all see it? So there's John in the shop working on the larger version of the small print. He came back and started a larger version of it, as well as several others from that series. And it's a beautiful series of drawings. So I'm hoping to do 4 continued images of Yellow Mountain in etching. And most of this is lit brown and aqua tint, and then some other wacky stuff that John did. A lot of that cascading stuff sort of broke through. It was sort of a semi-resist brown that he had done. So it's a 3, and then then the black plate is printed on top of that, and then there's a third plate with white printed on top of that, all the white line that sits up on top of the black. And it's very close. It's very close to the original drawing. They're wonderful images.
Yeah, we're getting some interesting vocals from you, Jim.
Mental images of oh no, really? What's going on?
Yeah, you're kind of
Not
ghosting
working?
in and out, but no, you're going in and out. That's okay. I mean,
Pardon?
this is the print that John made with Mike back in 1992, and as you said, he likes to mess around.
Yeah.
And this is a larger print than the one you guys did. But this is, and I think we've got some images of you in your shop that are next.
Yeah, a couple of projects, other projects. Actually, this is actually in New York. This is Eva Muller, photographer, German photographer I did this photography project with. Here's John Wilson working on his epic Martin Luther King image that was really, I describe as one of the greatest prints coming out of my shop over the 36 years I've been a master printer. And he was a wonderful guy, passed away a few years ago at the age 2, but it was a real honor to work with him. I was his master printer for 15 years, and we did a lot of great projects. Love that guy. And I included this photograph many years ago because Lester Johnson was the first artist I published after I graduated from graduate school. And I was a figurative artist when I first got to Yale, and then I was not when I left, and he was a bit pissed off about that. But in any case, he was connected to Provincetown, obviously, because he'd been there many years, way back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And this is one of the earlier projects we did. And this is actually him signing the editions in his dining room. On the way, I would always had to go down to Greenwich, Connecticut to have him sign his editions.
Excellent.
That's many years ago. That's like 1989, actually.
Excellent.
Thanks. Yeah, that was
Thanks.
fun.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody.
Really appreciate it. I should also mention that not only do we have these master printers with us, but all these master printers are also terrific artists. Every one of them has their own practice and have done some really beautiful work on their own, as well as working with an incredible group of artists. I think we're moving into next. We have some images from some of the various artists that worked early on, and Naya, you can just move through some of these if you would. And Richard Baker, I would love for you to talk a little bit about your work when you worked on the last Provincetown Print Project. As we scroll through some of these images, if you could talk about working with Mike and Bob and your
Sure.
experience.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it was an amazing honor and privilege to be invited to participate in this project. Since actually the images that you're going to show now were ones that I had witnessed before I was ever invited to participate in the project. So as you know, I was around the Work Center in Provincetown for a number of years before being invited to do this project. It was kind of daunting working with Michael because Mike's is so fluent in monotype that when he'd come in to demonstrate, I think Gail said something about the nervousness of artists not being familiar with the process. And so Mike, wanted to introduce me to the process, which I'd never done. And within like 5 minutes, I think he ran through an entire history of monotype techniques. It was like a crash course, and it was rather overwhelming, but somehow it stuck. And Bob Townsend was able to translate Mike's language into practical hands-on stuff. That forward energy that also Gail mentions was something that became addictive to me. In mono printing, you can generate enormous numbers of images before you close up print. And that became rather addictive for me. To the degree that Bob Townsend and I were unable to finish the project in Provincetown, I actually had to go up to a shop, I believe it was in Vermont, and finish it off because we'd opened up so many images and so many prints. Printmaking is a really collaborative thing. And it's a real dialogue between the artist and the printmaker. And it was surprising to me in how well or how dependent you are on the master printer's skill in guiding you through certain things. So when we were up in Vermont trying to finish these prints, I was describing to Bob Townsend a look that I wanted in a print. I was describing images appearing through old walls or whatnot. And so he suddenly disappeared. He went down to the basement and he brought back up cans of house paint. And we actually painted the prints with house paint as if they were walls. And I was, Bob, this is latex paint on top of oil printing ink. He said, "Oh, don't worry, it'll stick." And it worked. It was exactly the look that I wanted. But I would never have gotten there by myself. So it was a real testament to how collaborative the process is. And the great thing about it being collaborative is that it's also social. And at the Work Center, the printmaking shop doors are always open. And so prior to my working on the portfolio that I worked on, I was able to watch John Walker, Joan Snyder, George McNeil, Eric Avery, all of them creating these prints. And artists rarely get to witness another artist in their studio working. You rarely see somebody in front of their painting working. But with the printmaking process, it's all right there. And the remark about John Walker's process, I remember watching out of the window of my studio and seeing him bringing these sheets of paper out that looked like animal hide. They were so slippery, slick, and just freshly, butchered or something. And I walked down and said, John, how do you do this? And he said, you just do it. And that whole notion of you just having these plates arrive with God knows what on them and just seeing what happens. Well, witnessing that was really inspirational. And likewise, watching Joan Snyder work. And here's Eric Avery. Dr. Eric Avery was also a really fascinating person to have around the work center facilities. He was really generous, not only in his practice with his patients, but also in his art. When he arrived and befriending a number of fellows and residents, he handed out lino blocks to everyone and said, if you do a drawing on it, I'll cut this and we'll print them tomorrow. And so, you would just make we'd draw, a number of us drew on these blocks, gave them to him, he would go away and cut them and print them on postcards and, again, it's kind of this spirit of the social and the collaborative, like right there. There's nothing better than that. And all of that, of course, was facilitated by Mike Mazur. I mean, he was a very, very energetic, very present figure. And he juggled all of these various aspects so that it all got. I don't know what else you want to say to that.
Thanks, Richard. These are from the AIDS portfolio, I believe, with Eric and Suko. We're just going to scroll through some. And this is Sam Messer. Sam was a fellow.
Yeah, Sam was also one of those artists that were really amazing to watch.
And Joan Snyder. Georgia lived in town for quite a while, for a number of years, and then I believe lived with Pat DeGroot in one of her apartments.
Yep.
On the water. And I think this is probably the last image. It's a nice image to end on. I'm sorry we didn't have Richard's print after all that. The images that I got from the archive for some reason didn't have it. But Varjan is now, I believe, 92 and still working. He's not in Provincetown this summer. He lives in Hanover, New Hampshire, but he was always a delight to have in the print shop. He and Paul Rezica would work together and do nothing but sing Broadway show tunes and tell jokes, but an amazing artist. And I think that's our last images that we have. But we have time for any questions that are out there. And if you have any coming in, or we can be happy to answer anybody's questions. But
could we go back to Mary Frank print for a moment? The first one.
Okay, I'll see if Naya can find it.
The very first one with a horse.
Yep, I'll pull it.
Give her a few seconds.
Yeah.
She's also dealing with incoming comments and so on. So.
We'll see.
And to go to the questions.
Yeah, I think, well, we're getting a lot of thank yous. There you go.
Yeah. Mary Frank was the only woman artist in the Pencil to Print show that really made everyone aware of what monotypes look like. There's about 44 artists, 43 men and 1 woman, Mary, and I worked with her. Mary lost her son and daughter very suddenly within a few years. She was a friend of Michael's, and Michael encouraged her to come with him to do monotypes from the model at Westbeth in New York. And Mary told me the story, and working with Michael and her friendship they had together helped her work through that terrible losses that she'd been suffering.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the kind of guy he was.
yeah. We do have, thank you, Tony. We do have a question from one of our participants asking about how the prints were selected that were chosen for the portfolio. And I believe, Gail,
I can answer that.
you can answer that one.
Mike chose them. I mean, he was going to be going to curators with these portfolios of 4. Each would have 4 prints,
Right.
and you know, there's so many variants in a group of monotypes that anybody made that no matter what Mike chose, people went home. I'm sure Richard could confirm this with work that they were glad to have and that they could probably easily place. So yeah, it was. Mike had them bound. He took them to. He spent the winter going to different print and drawing curators selling these portfolios. So he kind of had to choose them.
Right. I know for the 50th, it was kind of a group effort of all of us sitting down, Andrew, Jim, and at the time, Mike Roberts, who was our director when we were first planning this, and a lot of us just talking about who we could get that had connections to the work center, and which artists that we could match up well with printers, people that they've worked with. So we spent a year or so trying to get everybody in line. And so that's kind of how the 50th came together, was being able to create a match between printers and artists, and getting the artists scheduled. As in many of these things for us, it was a 2-year project that was completed in the last 6 weeks. And,
that question of the printer is the printer has to be brilliant at what he does, and also has to be not only flexible but almost mirror back what the artist needs. I mean, I think Jim and Andrew and Rob have all described that process. It's so collaborative, and the artist in the printer shop is really dependent on the printer too. That's the feedback you're going to get.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike was wonderful with that. I remember one of my fondest memories was working with Mike in the print shop when he was working on, he would use a woodcut as an early matrix and then print on top. And he would be inking his wood blocks on top of the press and with blankets everywhere. And I went up to him and I said, Mike, what are you doing? You always telling us to stay away from the press. And he looked up at me and he just said, do as I say, not as I do. But that
sounds like a dad, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Man, yeah. But it was great. It was always fun working with him. And everything I initially learned about printmaking, I certainly learned working with Mike. It was always a lot of fun.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of nice comments and people saying hello to us. Some Marty Ep Carter, who was an old Provincetonian, says hi from Greenville, South Carolina. Marty, hi. And Mary Mead, who's been here. Thank you all. Thanks so many of you. Any of our esteemed panelists have any other things that they would like to add? Any comments or any other questions coming in?
Yep, we've got another question that is directed to Kiki. If she could speak to the inspiration for the crystal images paired with her hands.
Excellent.
Oh. Medicinal plants, teacher plants. I'll leave it at that, teacher plants. But also I found the lenses at like a flea market or something. And my father gave me a lens once when I was a child, and I still have it. It was something very miraculous. Anything that can, also for me, I don't understand color, so I like something that can contain color, like a lens can, refract the color. And then, sorry, I'm choking on watermelon. you know, it can refract the color, and you know, that's very exciting. That and teacher plants.
Excellent.
But also, you know, like the print world is a really great world to be part of. You know, it's just one of the nicest worlds I could imagine ever being in, because everyone has to be so generous, and everyone is really, like when you were talking about geeky kind of things to be speaking about, everyone is such a complete nerd and excited about such like simple nuances of things that are completely meaningless to people that are not interested, and like endlessly consuming, you know. And for me, I was also very pleased to be in a portfolio with the other artists. And you know, like to me, Nicole Eisenman is certainly one of the greatest printmakers since Jasper Johns or something. You know, like she is just an unbelievable printmaker. And you know, many of the other artists too. You know, it's just really, it's always an honor to meet printmakers and artists making prints. So, you know, it's a nice world to be in, and anybody can join, because the stakes are very low. You know, so
especially if it's monetized.
Follow like Rob,
Yeah.
and you know, learn to make prints, and then make it into a life. You know, and then you get to do everything.
Well said.
You're also right that it's like one of the best things that I think about printmaking is that it's by the nature of the print shop, you have to be nice to people. You have to be in the same space, and you have to talk to everyone else, and you can't have this like high horse that you hide in.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the medium. It's like, and we have to share our materials, and it lends to other sharing, which is good. That works across, like, I don't really like the term master printer, but it works across this like collaborative relationship with artists and printers. It also works with artists in the shop, et cetera, et cetera. And all the artists that I've ever worked with, like, they take that out of it. They're like, oh yeah, the print shop is cool. I don't have to be like hiding in my studio anymore. I can go there and see someone, and I can talk if I want, and I don't have to if I don't want to.
Well put. Well said.
Hey, Kiki, I don't know if you remember that you had a show at Barbara Krakow a bunch of years ago, and I was in the project room next
Yes, of course I do.
in her gallery. And we had dinner afterwards, and the entire, I think
wait a sec, my train's coming by.
We just talked about
Your train.
Let's hear the train.
But all Kiki and I could do was talk prints the whole night, and Barbara was sitting there feeling left out. But she knows prints, but it was kind of fun. I think we talked about a certain Picasso print we both love, that we both want to own someday.
But also, you can also say someone like Barbara Krakow, or there are very few print dealers in America or in the world of people that are willing to take on that space also. And they're very imperative, you know, as you are, you know, for the proliferation and people being excited, the next generation being excited about prints.
Yeah, no, she's loved prints since day one.
You can go anywhere.
That's right.
Okay, we're in pretty good shape, I think. Kelly, did you want to come on?
Got one more question, if I can, or let's see.
Sure. Yeah.
This is directed to James. You shared a turn of phrase based on working with John Walker, who had a purposeful disrespect for the chemical process of etching. Can you share any anecdotes or unexpected materials that yielded surprising and exciting results?
Correct. What do they want to know? I mean, they would show up, the plates would be covered with some unknown substance that I did not give him, and it wasn't necessarily dry. And he'd say, throw it in the effing drink, Jim, and let's see what happens. And we would leave it in there, and it would just sort of disintegrate. And then I'd print it, and we'd look at it, and then he would scrape and burnish and rework and wrestle it into submission. He was, you know, he was extraordinary. I mean, you know, sometimes he would draw directly and have, you know, more purposeful things, but he was not afraid to let the process speak for itself. Let's put it that way.
Excellent.
And there was one more question about the presence of women printmakers, or the lack of presence in women printmakers in the print project.
In the original print project, I think there were more women than men.
Yeah.
Right.
Mike liked women printmakers.
Yeah.
Wow.
And in the 50th, we had 2 women printmakers and 1 woman printer.
I think that's what the question was why there are no women printers, not printmakers, like master printers. You know,
Master printers.
And Judith Salatkin was great.
Yeah.
Carol Weaver, Jennifer
Great
Melody.
ones.
Yeah. And we have had.
Who was
And Aspinwall.
Motherwell's printer?
Catherine Mosley.
Yeah, Catherine Mazur. And we've had a lot of these at our summer workshops, for sure.
Marie Ancona.
Yeah, right. She was there 2 years ago. But it's a very good question.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of women coming out of Crown Point Press who learned from Catherine Brown.
Yeah, Catherine Brown.
Right.
Got one more question for Kiki. What is your connection to Alfred and Betty Woodman?
I love them both. That's all. I love them both.
Well, if there's anyone else with questions, they can type them in, but I think that's all I'm seeing at the moment.
Okay. So Kelly?
Thank you so much, Bert. Thank you to all of our presenters. Such a great night.
Kelly.
Introduce our Executive Director of the Fine Arts Work Center, Richard McMillan, who's going to tell us how to view the portfolio, how you can see it in person, how you can get a copy. Richard, could you join us?
This has been so terrific for me to learn this history about this amazing initiative of Michael's. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for everything you've done for the Work Center over the years. And on behalf of the trustees, it's really inspirational to have this moment with you and see you all. And I've recognized some names in the group here. So I'm just delighted to come back in touch with some of you I haven't seen for years. These stories are inspirational too, because just recently we started having this conversation about would it be possible to open up the Michael Mazur print studio for sort of individual independent artists working there. And I would love to be able to do that. So I can't tell you that I had no idea this would kind of come together this way, but it's making me feel like we can make this happen. So, under the auspices of, dealing with the pandemic, the changes that we've had to make here, the postponements, how do we bring life back to the Work Center? What a great possibility we have here to bring this back, to kind of activate and bring life into the print studio.
That's a good idea with the print shop, because it could be a one-on-one thing with no crowd. And the printer and the artist can keep some distance from each other.
Yes, that's the challenge we have. I think in all of our programming, Gail, it's just we're working on it. I think you can see by these programs that Kelly has designed, bringing people together in this kind of virtual world we live in now, but we can do more, and that's what we'll be working on. So thank you again for sharing these stories. I especially like Richard's stories, the level of detail that you brought to kind of being in the studio and interacting with the artists and the printers was really quite eloquent. So just getting back to the 50th anniversary portfolio, I know that there's some information about this, but we'd love to have you stop by GA Gallery on Commercial Street in town. Erin Woodbury is the contact person if you'd like to see the prints. They're hanging in the gallery now, but you can also see them online. And I think Nai's putting up for us just that information, but we'd just love to keep keep this alive and moving forward, and hope that you can connect back with us if you're interested in seeing these or interested in purchasing them and being part of this story going forward. And we will be in touch with you around this idea of opening up the studio, you know, as soon as we can. We'd love to do that. So thank you all again very much for all of your help.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
And again, I'll say and I would like to say in closing, I want to thank Kelly and Naya and another person who's not here, but who helped me a lot, Dawn Zimilis. These guys, I mean, you think about what we've had to go through in the pandemic, and you think, oh, well, we'll do some Zooms and we'll do this and we'll do that. It's a tremendous amount of work. And they have been tireless, Kelly and Naya and Dawn and our entire staff at the Work Center. And none of this stuff could be happening the way it's been happening without them. I'm incredibly grateful for their help every time I call Naya or Kelly or Dawn. They're there. They're rocks, and they've been fantastic. So virtual applause, much love. And again, thank you all so much for taking this time to spend with us and to help support us. It's been really great.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you all.